as a brand owner, you choose your battle. Do you want to see that short-term scale and growth? Cool. From an ad that's pushing the boundaries and sounds amazing, great, get that cash in the bank. But like ultimately, you know, you're not going to be able to develop like multiple iterations of that ad.
Hi, I'm Lucy.
And I'm Yasmin.
And we started an online community called Ecomm Girls Club because we had no friends.
Well, no, we had friends, just not friends working in e-commerce, D2C marketing and brand building like us.
And now we do. Ecomm Girls Club is the first international community exclusively for girls in e-commerce, and we have a lot to say about it.
So we started a podcast. We'll be here each week to talk about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, building online business and the problems we face in the e-com industry.
And we'll also be sharing the stories of the amazing women within our community who are all crushing it. So let's get into it.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I've just had a 2-hour brainstorming session with one of my clients, which, I don't know, it's pretty interesting if you're interested in user-generated content and paid media, because I think, well, straight off the bat, right, straight into it, I think if you're running a brand, especially like one that's scaling quite aggressively and you've got a team, it's so important to not like silo different parts of your creative process and have, you know, you do need to get everyone together, because I always learn something from like the paid media guys on what's working across their other clients, and then they learn from me like what I'm seeing. And I don't know, the collaborative process is always pretty interesting. I would say it's one of the fun bits of being an agency owner and working with brands.
Yeah, definitely. I think like it's really interesting because you see it at like different organizations based on their size, or different brands or agencies have different ways of working. And obviously when you first start a brand, either it's just like one person doing everything, or if you co-found, it's like two people doing everything. And then as you grow, things start, like people start to take authority over certain sections within a business. And I've actually seen, because I also do some like consultancy work within like MPD and creative for like bigger brands, like much bigger brands than my own. You can see actually how that can become quite fractured as like organizations grow. And although I think it's very important to have like people leading certain domains, whether it's like creative or ads, like ultimately you always need that information flow, because it's all linked. Every single thing is linked, isn't it?
And it's like that piece of, I love things being organized and systemized, but I find with creative and ads and paid media, you can systemize everything to a certain extent, but there isn't really a rule book. Like you can test and learn, but sometimes it is those like wacky ideas that just like blow everything out of the water, and it completely blows up your whole system and process and how you thought things should be. So there's never really a dull day. I do love though, if you look at loads of ads, like brands just love like setting things on fire, like legit setting things on fire for hook thumb scroll, which I always find entertaining.
Do you know what I've seen a lot of at the moment, which is like proper clickbaity ads? It's when they'll like the first 2 seconds of the ad will be a clip of like, yeah, maybe something burning down, or like someone like that one that's going around at the moment is like someone having water thrown on them. The one we were looking at it, you guys have just done one.
Yeah.
And like, so the first 2 seconds is like water being thrown, and it snaps into the ad of like an image of the product from the brand that's actually running the ad. So like that hooky stuff. But it's quite interesting because, so obviously with Cloth Project, it's like a more premium position brand. All our ads are very kind of on brand in terms of being more luxe and elevated. It's hooky, but it's not like, I don't feel like we could do anything gimmicky like that kind of ad that we've just discussed, because like I was talking to Sasha about it, and ultimately I feel like that really like reduces our brand value. However, I'd be so interested just to test it, to see what it does. I just don't know though, if you're a customer and you see that kind of ad, and then you go onto the website and they're selling products for £145, like that kind of process, I don't know if that works. But definitely for like lower price products, I think it's clearly working because everybody's doing it.
And I don't even think, sometimes it's not even to do with price point, but more so to do with like brand aesthetic, to your point.
Yeah.
Like, it could still be a premium product. So I work with brands that have what I would class as premium price point products for what they are, for their category, but just the nature of the brand lends itself well to the like being outrageous kind of mindset. And then there's also the question, it's probably a debate for every brand owner, is like, what's more important? And the answer is both, obviously, to this question, but what's more important, aggressive scaling and making money, or brand aesthetic? Because sometimes it is like that case of you do something completely off the wall, really doesn't align with your brand, but if the ROAS on it is incredible, you're still probably going to smile at the end of the day. So I think it's something everyone has to navigate as a brand owner, from my observations, and there probably is a different like point of balance for each brand depending on their aesthetic. And
I think it depends on like how you genuinely feel about running, like let's say running that kind of ad. So for example, with me, I would be more than happy to test that and just see like, does like put a spelling mistake in an ad, does that convert higher? As we know, like that is
PSA,
like a proven strategy. Yeah. But like, I know, just speaking on behalf of Sasha here, I know she'd be like very protective of the brand aesthetic and like the way it looks. And I think that's the perfect kind of balance that we need to have. And sometimes we'll try things that are a bit more wacky, but it's never been like crossing the line.
Too crazy.
Yeah, but I'd really like to test it just to see. The question is like, does that do more harm than good when you're trying to build like a more premium elevated brand? And you just don't know until you test these things. But it's very fascinating.
And then there's the whole kind of Pandora's box of moral standpoints in advertising as well. And you know, how far do you push it? Because I'm going to give an example. I don't work with a brand that does this, but the era of like the skinny tea, I mean, that's more of a product-based issue, I guess. You know, like there are products which the advertising will prey on, in this case, a woman's insecurities. Or like vulnerable kind of young mindsets, or it depends what it is, right? But it's like, how far do you push it as a brand owner? And again, it's the scaling aggressively versus brand values and guidelines. And obviously in the UK, there's the Advertising Standards Authority, I think. Is it Authority?
Yeah, the ASA.
Who, which will police everything. But even that, like the guidelines, there's a lot of grey area on what isn't allowed.
Yeah, and I think as well, like if you are pushing the boundaries with ads that are against ASA guidelines, and you know they're against ASA guidelines because you're saying your product does something like has not been clinically proven or has any data behind it, you might see scale and growth as a result of that, but it's not going to last. That's the reality. Like at some point, you're going to have to shut that ad off. Yeah. So like as a brand owner, you choose your battle. Do you want to see that short-term scale and growth? Cool. From an ad that's pushing the boundaries and sounds amazing, great, get that cash in the bank. But like ultimately, you know, you're not going to be able to develop like multiple iterations of that ad, which is obviously another strategy when you've got a top performing ad. In order to like keep it going, you've got to just keep iterating on it. But if your ad is like against ASA guidelines, you're going to have a very short shelf life before, like we just said, they come after you. So I think we've seen that happens all the time. Massive brands do it, small brands do it. Just, you got to pick your battle.
Again, it's like, for some of the brands as well, it's like, to your point, picking the battle, it's like worth them doing it in the short term.
And it depends who they're delivering into. Like if you've got investors who need to see your numbers and you're under the cloche, you got to find these like hacky strategies to get that money, that dollar.
I mean, my 2 cents on it.
But I keep doing weird stuff like that, sorry. And then I hear myself say it. And I'm like, I'm so cringe.
There's nothing more confronting than hearing yourself on a podcast, as we've discovered over the past 6 months. Like, I was literally at drinks last night and talking about how every week I just look like an egg on my Instagram stories. And it's just like, you just don't care. Like, you just have to get over it.
I don't know if anyone's, like, probably nobody's noticed, but Lucy and I started recording these episodes with our big, like, Apple what are they called? Headphones on.
AirPod Maxes.
Yeah. And then literally like promptly after about 2 episodes of seeing what that actually looked like on camera, they were ditched. Back to the original.
Well, I mean, literally 9 times out of 10, I'm sporting a David Seaman style ponytail, which I can't take credit for that. It's actually
David
my friend
Seaman.
We'll get a picture. We'll get the editors to insert a picture. I'll just pause for a comparison. I can't take credit for this. It's actually my friend Casey who calls this low ponytail funny. The David Seaman.
I'm just googling David Seaman. Is he a footballer?
Yeah, I think he's a goalie.
Guys, no,
he was on Dancing on Ice.
Most people are not going to have any idea who David Seaman is. I'm just googling him
because that is the visual I'm giving today from Portugal, ladies and gents.
The only reason I know who he is because I grew up with 4 brothers and a dad who's obsessed with football. So it's the only reason I know who David Seaman is.
Wow, we've segued from really smart paid ad chat to footballers very quickly. I've already heard about. So we're recording this like 2 days after that, the England football match, which everyone thought they were going to lose, and then Jude Bellingham didn't know who he was.
Oh wow. That was
all
amazing.
I've heard about.
The bicycle kick.
I've heard about this morning is his bicycle kick. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty epic. I'm not
going
to lie.
It came up in ad chat. Everyone was like, how do we get that into an ad? Like all the guys are like, we must get him into ads.
Did you find a way?
That's my next meeting after this podcast recording.
Jude Bellingham bicycle kick ad.
I'll link it in the show notes if it ever makes it to Meta ads for one of the brands. But
love that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, to circle back quickly on my ad chat before.
You could have, sorry, I just had a really good idea. This is my ADHD, like interrupting you. You could have him like jumping up in slow-mo, about to kick it.
Yeah.
Say if you're working with like a gummy brand or a supplement brand, he could kick it and then the ball turns into a gummy that like drops in someone's mouth.
Or even that, the like water splash ad we were talking about, which we're going to have to link all these so people know what we're actually on about. But I think it was Candy Kittens who did it first, for anyone who wants to go look at the kind of dramatic splash ad. You could do that with the bicycle kick. I bet you brands next week will all be or by the time this is out, there will be ads with his bicycle kick everywhere. But yeah, just to finish up on ads, my 2 cents on strategy is if you are going to do something risky and push the boundaries, just make sure it's not the only thing your spend is going to, and like make sure you leverage other iterations and concepts as well, because otherwise as soon as that gets pulled, you're kind of in the bin for a little bit.
Well,
it's a bad day for CAC.
I got a message earlier saying that, just some like interesting stats at the moment. Meta now deems an ad with more than 4 exposures as fatigued, and also 50% of ads die after 2 days, pushing on the view of ad volume and the diversity of creative to do the targeting. So that just like echoes your point there, Lisa, about having like multiple different creative going at the same time. 50% of ads die after 2 days. That is wild to me. I mean, we've been running some of our ads for 6 months and they still, I mean the CAC's definitely gone up on them. We're about to sack it, but I don't know.
That is actually
wild.
A top tip for anyone looking to run ads, whether you're just starting or you are a UGC creator even, and you're coming up with ideas for brands, or you're like me and you run a UGC agency, is get signed up to, there are a couple of platforms where you can go that are better than, I know you can see an ads library on Meta, like what other brands are running, but there are a couple of platforms such as Foreplay and Atria, which again we can link below, where you can go on and you can kind of see what brands are running. A lot of the time you can see how long they've been running the ads for and get some stats and actually download the ads as well. I just think it's a really useful tool for inspiration, and you also notice trends and you can like set up your category so you like track certain brands. Really useful tool. Wouldn't run a UGC agency without it.
I agree. Just make sure when you're Googling Foreplay, you add in the word ad platform. I didn't do that the other day.
It's an X-rated podcast.
What a name though. It's just like the perfect name for an ads platform. It's a good one. Yeah.
It is a good one. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they do. Lucy and I the other day, so fun fact, we recorded
fun
a
fact
whole...
about our podcast trauma.
we recorded a whole episode. It was only about half an hour long, so we were so exhausted from our week in Lisbon, on eldest daughter syndrome, which we then realised Lucy's mic wasn't on for
Whoopsie.
the whole episode.
We haven't solved the mystery. Because it was
weird.
turned on.
Yeah, weird. I don't know. We have so many technical difficulties. Case in point with this podcast that I feel like at this point we just go with it. Like when we heard from the producers that it wasn't recorded, I was just like, fine.
Sure.
Like cool. cool. So
I
think
think
talk about
we
that
should
today.
have a segment on the podcast called Podcast Trauma of the Week, because where we go through something. Or maybe we should just call it Trauma of the Week, because between the pair of us, something stupid happens each week. Not necessarily for Ecomm Girls Club, through a whole, like, our own lives in some way. Like,
yeah. God. Sometimes I never know how much is an overshare on this podcast. I don't know. Still working out. I'm just gonna
we'll find
Let's
out.
talk about an interesting topic. So, today we're going to talk about.
I've got a quick interesting
daughter
topic
syndrome.
though before that.
Okay, go.
That's not good for well. So I just think when you get to your late 20s, you've just got to be yourself. Like, you learn that, right? Like, it's
completely.
just authenticity. Like,
Also,
I'm very straightforward with.
Yeah. I mean,
as a
also
you.
like, it's such a career or whatever it is you do is such a huge part of your identity the older you get, because you've just been doing it for longer, so it's a bigger part of your life. Like, you have to be totally upfront and open with it all, so especially when you're meeting people.
I would say though, and like, this is one thing I've learned since launching my own companies, and I know Yaz is way better at it than I am, but unfortunately, part of the game is you have to share content, especially if you're on Ecomm branding, if you run a community for girls. Like, you just have to get out there, and you know, at the end of the day, who is going to go further? I've had this conversation with friends as well. The person who shares the content is probably going to grow whatever they're doing quicker than the person who doesn't in 2024.
I agree. I think it's like, again, it's just like getting over the cringe. Also, if you like launch your own brand, chances are you're going to be featuring in a load of the content because you're not paying models.
Creators.
You're not paying models for the shoots. You're not paying creators for the ads or for the content. So you should do it yourself. But I have to say, like, this was a thought I've had more recently. I have never seen myself so much than I have in this last year since launching a brand and launching a podcast. Like, I have to say, I didn't really used to use Instagram that much, believe it or not. And I made a decision at the beginning of last year, when I kind of came out of agency life, that I was going to use it as a tool to talk about what I do and what I love to do, and kind of share my experience a bit more, which what this podcast is now great for. But like, God, as a result, I really like see my face so much more, and I'm not sure that that's a good thing. Not that like I hate the way I look or anything like that. I don't. I like the way I look, but you are forced to, I don't know. You do review.
It is a weird.
bit more.
I've noticed it as well, because I used to, like, literally maybe 3 years ago, I refused to use Instagram stories. Like, I did not use it at all. I would post on, my main grid, but I really had a thing where I was like, I just don't want to do this. And I can't believe now how different that is, because I use it every day. But at the same time, again, in 2024, most of my client base is under 30. Most of them, well, actually all of them, every single one of my clients follows me on Instagram, and LinkedIn and stuff as well. But it's just the nature of it, and I follow them back, and all their teams follow me. It's just such a connected world that it is important, especially if you're producing content for brands and things. Like, it's kind of like your CV in a way. And I honestly, I enjoy like taking pictures of things and like taking pictures of my friends, but I don't enjoy seeing my face as much as I currently do on social media.
I think as well, like when I had the agency, everyone would, I never really used Instagram that much, and everyone would always say like, oh, you have to use it for your job, don't you? And I was always like, no, I don't. Like, I literally launch brands. Like, there's other platforms that I use to get data and information on how to launch a brand, not Instagram at the time. Now being brand side, I find that it's the complete opposite. Like I do have to be on Instagram because I do look to what other brands are doing, or I have to notice trends that often are communicated through socials as the first platform that brands use to showcase trends. And even ads, like there can be jewelry brands, for example, that I've never heard of that I'll get served ads for, and I'll get inspiration from those ads because they look really good or they're engaging or whatever. So there's lots of benefit to me now in like having a brand to using Instagram, but like at the same time I'm just on Instagram so much more, and I don't love that.
Yeah, it's like a catch-22 kind of thing. I do love, because I travel a lot and move around the world a lot, I love it in the sense of like a visual diary. Like I love that because I can go right back from like 10 years ago, or around then I think is probably when I got Instagram, and see like my whole like journey in life, because I just love documenting stuff generally, like I journal, all that kind of stuff. So I love it for that, but it's when I have to push stuff that I find it like I always joke, I say I give myself the ick, you know, like with stuff, but it is just part of it. And to your point, anyone who actually supports you, my friends know that like it's part and parcel of it, and most of them actually cheerlead me. Well, they all do, to be honest.
Well, the way
so
I
it
look
is
at it as well.
Fine.
Yeah, the way I look at it as well is like, oh, what's that phrase? The people that mind don't matter, and the people that matter don't mind. And it's it's so true, because like you just said, your nearest and dearest, they just love you for who you are and accept you for who you are, and they know you. It's like, oh cool, Yaz is just doing that thing again. Whereas the people that don't know you, if they have a negative opinion of it, it doesn't matter because you don't know them.
Yeah.
And if they have a positive opinion on it, amazing, great. Like they're getting the value from it that you wish for them to get. So like, yeah, net positive. I think
the thing that it is hard about Instagram is it's like it's played back to you. So like when we post reels for the podcast, it's like me playing back, because even when I'm doing presenting work, for example, I never see it back ever, really. Like ever. I never listen to it, or you know, so I just find it a bit much. But
I agree.
You know, it's 2024. Like here we are.
You just got to like get stuck in, I think. And I don't know. I think it has some benefit if it's like channeled in the right way, you know.
And like a lot of the stuff we share, I'm so proud of as well. Like when we share about the events and
me too.
The sessions, and yeah, I don't know. It's cool.
I've tried.
Anyway,
to, like,
that's my piece on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm gonna make one last point. I tried to make my Instagram. There's like some personal stuff on there, but like more work focused. So like the stuff that I do post, sometimes it's about where I'm like traveling to or whatever, because they're like pretty pictures, but a lot of the time it's like work based, and that kind of is a nice way to like separate it from my actual life. But anyway, I digress. So let's now we'll actually get syndrome.
25 minutes in and we'll get to what we're actually talking about today.
Wonder if anybody's still listening at this point.
Yeah.
Rosanna, are you still there?
Yeah. Yeah, Rosanna is one of our Hong Kong members and is like so supportive, and she listens to this on her hikes, and I love it.
Same. It gives us so much joy knowing people actually listen to this, because
I think people will have turned off when they heard me compare myself to David Seaman, to be honest. I think that's where we'll have lost everyone.
That's hilarious. So I am going to Google. This is what I did last time, so I'm not like as surprised, sadly, by the results. But eldest daughter syndrome symptoms are quite interesting.
Well, so to give a bit of an introduction, the scientists in Yasmin and I noticed a pattern. Well, not a pattern, but we've got a lot of friends, obviously, as you'd expect, who are founders, who are also female. That kind of happens when you run a community for females in e-commerce. And we noticed that a lot of us are actually the eldest daughter of our family systems. Which was just like an observation like Yaz and I made between ourselves. And then we noticed one of our friends was also the eldest daughter, and then I was thinking about like my social circles, and we kind of noticed patterns in what that meant for us and our, I guess, life journeys and like the paths we've chosen to take, namely setting up businesses in this case. So we wanted to talk about it. Take it away, Yaz. What's Google throwing up?
Google. Okay, signs of eldest daughter syndrome. According to licensed marriage and family therapist Katie Morton, there are 8 signs you might have the eldest daughter syndrome. This is the list. So number 1, you have an intense feeling of responsibility. Accurate. I feel like that's just, I have to say, I feel like that's more of a typically male trait. And a responsibility to provide, to be successful, to like, kind of make money, because ultimately you're going to have to support your wife and children and a family. But I have felt this responsibility for as long as I can remember.
Oh my God, me too.
And it's like, it doesn't matter to me that I might have a husband one day that can provide. I still feel like I need to provide for myself, for my life, for our children. And that's just something that I do think like makes a lot of sense if you're the eldest daughter, because you have that sense of responsibility for your younger siblings.
I was going to say, you've looked after younger siblings, and I think naturally as you get older, your parents, I'm, for context, I'm one of 2. My brother and I are very different. He's actually way funnier than me, which is annoying, but and way better. That's rude. And also he's way better at sports, and he's
jokes. You're
got
hilarious.
Clever. Very stressful for me, but good at everything. But I think there's a difference in like what my parents tell me and what my parents tell him. Like I've always been seen as an more responsible, I guess, or like I think he's probably been more like sheltered just generally in life because he's younger, and I think that's something that I've noticed amongst lots of other people who are the older sibling, like compared to their younger siblings. I don't know if you've had similar experiences.
Oh, 100%. Like my younger brother, my mum, like
Yasmin's
really...
one of a million, by the way.
Yeah, one of a million, 1 in a million. Oh God, I just did it again.
Always, baby. She's a star.
I'm one of 8, but like that's across 4 different sets of parents. So just like there's half brothers, half sisters, step brothers, no stepsisters, all in that mix. But I'm like the eldest, other than my stepbrother, who's like 2 months older than me. But anyway, being the I've kind of felt that my whole life, but I don't mind it. Like I don't hate it. I quite like being the eldest.
I like to know the information. Yeah.
I like to have autonomy and feel like I've got an element of control, even though I have absolutely no autonomy and control over my brothers. They're their own men. But, when you're growing up, you definitely kind of assume that responsibility, especially when you're
kids. I was very bossy as a sibling, same. I think. I was like, ran a tight ship with non-compliant sibling. Like, I just vividly remember like strapping him into one of my doll's prams and like making him sit in it, and me like pushing around the garden and him screaming.
Did you ever have those like plastic heels? The little Barbie heels? I can imagine you doing that, like wearing those heels, pushing your non-compliant younger sibling around the garden, like strapped in and can't move. Oh, anyways. Okay, point 2. You're an overachiever, type A, and very driven. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, and we can
type A
bosh through that one.
psychos, as I call
us. Type A psychos, yes. Number 3, you worry a lot and probably have anxiety. So,
I worry about everything.
And yes, yeah. I always thought I got that from my nana, bless her, because she was like a chronic worrier, and my granddad was the absolute opposite. But I think it probably is also a symptom of eldest daughter syndrome. You just...
But I pretend I'm not.
You
I'm
do.
Fine, and I
don't
pretend.
Care. You're very good at putting a mask up. Yeah.
And then like we'll be having an absolute meltdown behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's very unhealthy.
Number 4, you struggle with people-pleasing behaviors. This is probably one of my favorite points out of these symptoms, because I can really relate to this. And like, It's been something that I didn't really know that I did until I met Jim, and he kind of noticed it in me, because like we've had conversations where he's
Jim
just
is
like,
Yasmin's
I've
partner,
observed,
just in case people don't know.
Yeah, he's my boyfriend. Just like through observing, spending time with me, and he thinks it's a trait that I developed through having an agency, which I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think it was definitely enhanced, and like there was a spotlight shone on that trait of mine through having an agency, because like I was constantly like pitching or like winning people over in terms of like getting them to trust me and like me, because likability is such a factor when you're building businesses, which is, you know, are all built on relationships. And like doing that for 5 years throughout my like early 20s, mid 20s, I think definitely like exaggerated this people pleasing tendency. And now I'm like trying to understand how to kind of rewire that part of my brain so that I just don't give as much of a shit, because the reality is I just don't need to anymore. Like I still need to like make money, build a brand, do all these things, but it's not dependent on pleasing people anymore.
I think can relate. And I think the other thing that's probably part of that is like the validation seeking part of being the eldest daughter, like from your parents. And maybe this is all siblings, I don't know, but I would say I'm always like quite eager to please.
Yeah, me too.
I don't always get it right, but like as most people, but I think that's a massive part of it as well. And like I built to your point about running an agency, I was a PA for very senior leaders of very big organizations, as well as CEOs of startups and things like that in like the earlier part of my career. And that is literally people pleasing. Like that is people pleasing in a job, right? You have a person to please. And I loved it because I love helping people. Love helping people. And I was really good at it because like I just like fixing things and organizing things, as Yasmin knows. And just like, and I loved like that I had one person that was what mattered, is like that person being happy and that person having the best day they can have. And that's what I saw myself as there to do, is to make their day better. But yeah, when you break it down, that is people pleasing.
Do you think like, so not to get too deep here, but for me, I would always seek validation from my dad, and then it became like my stepdad.
Same.
And like I worked, I don't know, I just worked really hard in my life to please that kind of father figure in my life. And I think when I kind of then ended up starting my first business, I just simply replaced that person with my clients. And then and that was it. It was just like, that constant like seeking of validation that I didn't realize I was in this kind of constant wheel for so many years. Maybe I want to say 15 years realistically.
Wow.
And I still like, I think that takes a long time to kind of stop being like that. And a lot of work actually, but it's definitely indicative of like, the root cause is trying to please a parental figure.
I think, I can relate. The other thing I would add, and I think this is the same for you with your stepdad, especially, and your dad actually, but my dad is an entrepreneur, so he was like the first point of reference for building a business. Like that's how I knew what it was when I was smaller, So I think that's the other thing is like, I still go to my dad today for like, can you read my P&L and like all that kind of stuff, because I know he knows. So I think when you are, although we work across very different categories, I think it's just like natural to then want to like be successful to that person, because ultimately they're probably one of the reasons we both are entrepreneurs, because learnt behaviors 100%. And seeing it firsthand, right?
Yeah, agree. Really interesting. Okay, point 5, you have a hard time placing and upholding boundaries. I think I don't know.
You're better at it than me.
I think I am now, but I also think that this is part of the work that I've been doing over the last year and a bit. To just like...
You're better with work boundaries for sure.
To take care of me more. And I think that honestly, like that's just because I like almost killed myself. Not serious, not like in that actual way, but like trying to build my business the first time, like blood, sweat and tears, and just the emotional oh God, exertion over like a multi-year long period, I came out the other side and I was just like, I physically can't, like mentally can't continue to like give and feel like I wasn't really getting the equal value back. And so, yeah, rightly or wrongly, my boundary setting has just been a result of like necessity rather than choice. And I don't think that's the right way around. It's almost like when you get to burnout, you have to start putting boundaries in because you're just fucking burnt out. But really, you want to be trying to do it before you get to that point. So that's why I think I'm better now. As a result of that.
I think I've always, even when I worked in the corporate world though, I still filled, even though I had like a quote unquote 9-to-5 job, I still did all the extra things you could possibly do. You know,
I remember you telling me this.
And like the British Chamber of Commerce and all these things, and played netball and like did so many things that I've always just struggled with the whole like boundaries thing. Like the running joke is if I have any free time, I'll find like another business set up or something ridiculous. But I am like slowly learning as well. I think it's hard, and it's actually been really useful having you as a friend who's like been through the whole agency process, as like some wisdom for me as well on like the balance of it and understanding what I'm going through. Well, because you do learn like, and it's the same with any business, but your work is never done. And if I don't like go to the beach, I could, if I justified it on like, I'll do it when I'm done with work, any social plans, I would never do anything. I just would never do anything. So I think I'm slowly learning.
So hard. Like obviously Lucy and I just spent like 5 days together in Lisbon. And
5 days of joy, Yasmin.
Yeah. It was actually really fun.
It was
really
fun.
I was like super impressed, I guess is the word, by like how hard you work. I
wrote a LinkedIn post about you this week, by the way.
Oh, do you know what? I don't use LinkedIn.
I know
I just get like constant notifications. Did you actually?
Well,
really, was it nice?
I wrote one about us co-working together.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have a look after this podcast.
Yeah, but thank you. I do work hard, but I don't think I work the smartest.
So I don't know, but I feel like that's what I was gonna say is. Well, firstly, I think in order to like work smart, you've got to work hard first because you've got to acquire the skills, the experience to understand how to then work smarter. Like that's just efficiencies, which takes time to learn, right? Like any business. It's like meta ads to bring it back to later. You've got to like test and learn before you optimize. So that was the first thing. And then also I was listening to a podcast, by the way, another really good podcast. It's called The Operators. And it's quite advanced in terms of like, they're like 4 guys who have $1 billion ecom brands. And like, so they talk about, it's big business chat, but really interesting nonetheless, just for like, if you're curious. They had a head of growth, a female head of growth on as a guest yesterday. I listened to the episode. And she was just saying that like, no one works harder than an agency, which I don't know, like, it depends on the agency, right? But her like reason for that is that if you've got an agency running your ads or your UGC, an agency is based on total performance as far as the brand or the client is aware. Like they don't care the hours you're working. The brand doesn't care like how much you're working. All the brand cares about is like the results that they're getting from the agency. So the agency is much more inclined to work weekends, work evenings. Like they're not just going to clock off on the weekend when actually, you know, they might be in the ads manager, like optimizing, blah, blah, blah. Whereas someone who's hired as a 9-to-5, they probably are going to clock off over the weekend because at the end of the day, they're still going to get their salary. So I think it's just running an agency is really hard graft. Like you just have to
also
work.
I would say in like the e-com space, and quick explainer, like I kind of run an agency that has 2 parts. I do some consulting and like ops work for select brands, and then the bulk of the work I run UGC systems and content systems, which is super fun, but super messy and chaotic, as you can imagine, with that much creative and like ads. But the other thing is, if you're running a creative agency and you've been employed by a brand, and especially if you're like niche like me and you do one type of content, you are also going to be competing with other agencies or other inputs that are serving that brand. So, you know, they'll give you the meta performance for the week and stuff. And the first thing I do is to look to see how many of my creatives are in the top 8. Like it's the first thing I do. you know, and so you are as well, because UGC is great and high converting and it really works, but there's obviously high production and stills and whatever gifts and other sources, and most brands will have more than one person inputting to that for like diversity. So yeah, it is, you're also always competing, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Just out of interest, what do you find is the best performing type of ad, like between UGC, like across your portfolio brands? UGC over like high production, really? Interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say it varies between very native UGC, so like ugly content, and some it's more like polished UGC.
There's like a split balance between those performing.
Yeah, I would say like it just kind of depends on the brand. And then, I mean, you always get a batch of good performing statics as well in the mix. It's normally like a mix of statics and videos. Yeah. What I would say for anyone who wants any tips with the statics is statics are a really good way to really quickly test messaging. Because it's so easy to like iterate statics. Like my team can produce like 25 within like a day, you know, like we can get them to the client within 24 hours with loads of different messaging hooks, and then if they work, then use them for UGC, you know. So giving away all my secrets here.
That's the point of the podcast. So the next point is
oh God, it's still an eldest daughter syndrome.
Oh, should we just script it? I'm going to like bosh through that. You resent your family and friends. No, your siblings and family. You struggle with feelings of guilt, and you have a difficult time in your adult relationships. I feel like 6 and 8 are the same bit.
Yeah, but I think most people, like, family relationships are never straightforward, right? Like, I'm always suspicious when people are like, everyone in my family gets on amazingly and we all have a wonderful time. I'm like, oh, I bet your sibling doesn't say the same. Like, is normally my answer.
Nice. Agree.
Yeah, I just think, but even adult relationships outside of your family system with friends, like, it is hard in like when your life priorities are shifting so much and you're changing yourself and like becoming you, I guess, because your 20s are a rough ride, basically, right? I think it's kind of hard. I do feel guilt. I feel guilt for like not doing enough for my family, or like I live on the other side of the world. I feel bad about that sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Do you feel guilty?
What about what? Just
like
feelings
with family and like things like, do you struggle with feeling guilty?
No, not really. Not because I'm a psychopath, but mainly because no, only because like my mum moved to Spain when I was like 18 anyway. So like she was the first mover in that situation. So like not really.
She
and
was
then
the first mover.
So like now, because I'm traveling a lot and I don't live at home, I don't feel guilty, but I will definitely feel like, I don't know, I do want to be near my mum, like when I have kids and like at that stage in my life. But for now, I don't feel guilty. And in fact, if anything, when I was like really working really hard at building the elementary, I kind of felt like it was something I needed to do as a result of, well, two things. Like, number one, to like kind of thank my dad and my stepdad for like supporting me, and my mum supporting me like financially through sending me to like really good schools and giving me that opportunity, you know. So like I don't feel guilt as a result of having to then work hard and be aloof.
I think the other thing, and I was having this, I can't remember who with, I spout this a lot, this one. Brace yourself. I just think the odds, like when you think about, especially in today's world, like the chances of us being born in the UK to like lovely families and having free healthcare and education and access to all these things, like like having that opportunity, and then especially the education piece, I feel like I don't want to waste that, because how many people in the world would kill for that opportunity, right? Like, we don't know how lucky we are, and everyone gets caught up complaining about like us earlier in this podcast, complaining about having to post on Instagram and our faces, right? Like, we all know, like, stupid in the grand scheme of things, right? And it's just that like perspective piece on like, I don't want to waste that opportunity that I've been given, because how many people would love that opportunity, or love to go to like the school I went to, or, you know, have the experiences I had growing up thanks to the hard work of my parents, really. Apart from the luck piece about being born, because whatever you prescribe to, like religion or spirituality wise, you don't have much control over it. But I just think that's really important to consider as well.
Yeah, I guess that's just gratitude, isn't it? At the end of the day, like being super grateful for it all. It's also just like, we obviously have an unfair advantage, I'd say, or like a competitive advantage in terms of the start in life that we got. But I actually read this, I'm starting to read this book. It's here, my laptop's on it. It's called Same as Ever by Morgan Housel. And at the beginning, there's like some quotes. And one of them actually is, keep running, most competitive advantages eventually die. Which I basically take from that is like, ultimately the hardest worker wins. Irrespective of like how much of an advantage you got, like just keep running, because you know you will still win. Like hard work trumps everything. Talent. Yeah, hard work.
Well, it's like, well, it's also like hard. There's that saying that saying hard saying the hard work. Oh God, I haven't had a like.
Oh my God, have you not? I've had 3.
I mean, I'm having a coat like my life at this moment, this transient life I lead. We just roll with it. But hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work as well, right? It's all those kind of things. Maybe we should just, do you know what we should do? We should just do a 40-minute podcast where we just profoundly say quotes and affirmations to people. I'll dress as David Seaman. You can come as
I thought you were going to come out with something really funny
then.
Some kind of suggestion on who I
We'll just do some ASMR. And we'll do a mixture of ASMR and quotes.
I've got a few more.
And we'll all wear Cloth Project as well, just so you can turn it into an ad.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I can't wait. We should put some like background music on as well. So funny.
Yeah. Like oceans crashing. Yeah. Oh, we do have fun. Like, honestly.
Well, I think that.
See, aren't you happy we re-recorded this now? This is way better than our first one. Yeah, this is way
better. Our first one, we were exhausted, sat on a sofa in our Airbnb, just giving it everything we've got, and it not working. This was way better.
We'll try. Yeah, I think we can wrap up there because I have a client call.
Well, enjoy. I've got a bit more work to do, then I'm going for a lovely late lunch.
Delightful. Well, if you like our podcast, please do like, subscribe. It means the world.
Yeah, please
to
can
us.
you actually subscribe if you've got this far, because we actually look at the number of subscribers to justify whether we like carry on doing this or not, because it's not that cheap. So please subscribe. Thanks, guys.
If you want the podcast to stay, tell us. Have
a good week. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And to get involved with Ecomm Girls Club, search for @Ecomm Girls Club on Instagram.
And if you feel like taking your Instagram stalking one step further, we are both also on Instagram @Yasmin Sheik and @LucyCG.